Hello, beautiful human being. Welcome back to the Rhyme Magic Show. It's going to be a unique episode today where I'm giving my opinions on a phenomena I've noticed of a higher percentage of spiritual teachers and advanced spiritual students converting to Christianity recently. I've noticed it about 18 months ago because there were some key people who I won't name that I know personally and have been very inspired by, who have made this transition. Not only have they adopted the religion of Christianity, but left all their other spiritual ideas at the door of the church, so to speak, which has really perplexed me. And I wasn't quick just to judge and go, why would anyone do that, in more of a skeptical tone or a judgmental tone, but actually questioned it, really asked the question, why would someone do that? And I've spent about 18 months feeling into this topic and getting my close friends and teachers' perspectives on it, and actually reached out to a few people that have transitioned themselves. And I've taken my sweet time before commenting on this because I didn't want to be insensitive to those that have made this transition, just cast off some judgments and some ideas around something that I don't really fully understand. And so before getting into the episode, I'm going to, just pre-frame that this is a set of opinions and ideas, and by no means is it designed to cast judgment, just to riff on what I find most interesting in this planet, which is talking about the human experience, talking about psychology, talking about spirituality and emotional healing and different ways to approach life. One could choose to be a atheist their whole lives. One could choose to be a deeply spiritual person and not be religious, and someone else might choose to be religious. I'm curious why someone would choose that, and spend a lot of time feeling into this idea. So I'm excited to share my thoughts on it, but I did definitely want to pre-frame before we get into this, just to proceed with some respect. And I really hope that this episode brings forth a big feeling of honor for everyone's individual choices, and also not feeling that we know better than other people. I actually did a post recently which sparked some people talking about this, and that really gave me the nudge. Hey, this is something that's worth you talking about. And so I did a post just talking about a workshop that I have coming up, and which is my signature program. It's my life's work in a 3-day experience called The Art of Fulfillment. It used to be called The Art of Courage. I've changed it to The Art of Fulfillment. And so I did a promotion for it on my Facebook profile, on my Instagram, and someone commented on it. I'm not going to name names. Someone commented on it saying, "Have you found God now? Is that what this is all about?" Question mark. Someone responded saying, "Most likely." And so someone replied to this person's comment, "Most likely. Answers are never external, yet I've seen so many people in these worlds convert to the next answer, always searching for answers outside of themselves. The common thread with all this PD and spiritual or healing work is how it brings elements of your core truth. Truth is within." So that's someone responding to another person asking me if I'm doing the Art of Fulfillment workshop because I've found God now. And then someone else responds to the person, none of which have spoken to me, and just said, "Yes, most likely he has. Most likely I have found God." And it was just really interesting. And it made me feel a little bit disrespected that someone would have a full conversation making all these assumptions about me. And then, anyway, the person then replied again saying, "Yeah, it feels like a swing to godly stuff," which I'm seeing that trend also, is that after they feel like they have tried everything and still feel broken, they just give up. And so turn to God as a way to justify what's happening to them and save them. But none of us need saving. That's the funny thing about it all, lol. So just this tonality of it's a joke. It's all funny. Lol, that's a funny thing. It's not funny. I don't feel like choosing to convert to a religion is a joke or a funny thing, or someone feeling that they need saving is funny. So I found this really distasteful. Then there was another reply to this. I send love because I remember when I felt that way and as a teen turned to God. Never know though. I think there's no one way to do anything. We are all so unique, so we find our own way in business, health, relationships, and spirituality. Love heart, Rose. And I appreciate that. I feel like that's a bit more tasteful. However, that thread to me just blew my mind. It's like I do a post about a workshop. Someone says, "Hey, have you found God?" And someone else says, "Yeah, probably." And the other person says, "Oh my gosh, lots of people are finding God right now." And the funny thing is that it's real funny that they've tried everything and they still feel broken. That's not funny. And then the other person says, again, I feel that's what's happening here. I haven't even commented on the thing. I didn't even have a chance. I had this full conversation a few minutes after I posted this thing. So I haven't made a swing into a particular religion. And I do have a relationship with my idea of spirituality and God. But I just found that whole conversation to be something that just felt a bit distasteful. And so I want to talk about this topic in a bit more depth. And I'm going to jump into the episode in a moment properly and talk about it. But that comment thread that I had with these two women who I'm not going to name, but having this conversation about where I sit with religion, yeah, it was really interesting because there was a lot of a judgmental tone in there, and an assumption from both the flavor of the two people chatting that they knew better and that they've been there when they were younger and now they've grown past that. I've got a different perspective on this though, which I'm going to share in this episode, that someone doesn't necessarily grow past the idea of being religious. And these are just my opinions. And I really hope that I can not just repeat the same distasteful energy that I experienced when I read those comments, but share my perspectives and ideas openly, hopefully humbly, so that we can have a potential different perspective on why someone might do this, so that we can look through the lens of with more love and understanding and acceptance and admiration for people's choices, letting them honor and own their own sovereignty. So it's going to be a bit of a riffing episode if you haven't already noticed. And before I get into the episode, I do this podcast because I love talking about this kind of content, teaching on spiritual, personal development, emotional healing. I love talking about all this, these approaches to life and giving my perspectives on it all. And whilst I love sharing more surface layer perspectives or some deep perspectives even, my real life's work and passion is creating a deep transformation in someone, helping people find fulfillment in life, which really is an art. That's why it's called the Art of Fulfillment workshop that I run. And so if you're listening to this episode, or you follow my YouTube channel or my Instagram page, or you just listen to these podcasts, I really strongly encourage you, give yourself the gift of the full transformation. If you listen to this and you haven't yet been to the Art of Fulfillment, it's affordable. It's $1,500. And I'm so willing to do a payment plan if that's too much of a stretch to afford in the short term. If we've got to extend a payment plan, that's cool. That's cool. My bread and butter comes from my one-to-one coaching and also my investments. So this workshop really is my way of being of service in the world. And it's a lot deeper than we could possibly go by you listening to. Even if you binge listened to / watched the 70 plus hours of content on here, there's nothing like having space held where one's vulnerabilities and blind spots and edges can be witnessed and supported. And so that's the purpose of the 36 hours that we spend together at the Art of Fulfillment. They're 3 12-hour days. So please check it out. If you have any questions for me, you can email me, ryan@ryanmagic.com, or you can send me a message on Instagram @theryanmagic. Or you can just go to ryanmagic.com and find the page for it. I don't have too many offers out there. This is the main one, so you'll be able to find it pretty easily at ryanmagic.com and reach out if you're interested. Let's get into the episode. So, why would somebody who has been a student and teacher of spiritual development for a decade or more choose to put all of those sets of principles and models and frameworks and ideas in the bin and say it was all wrong? The true way to live is to be a follower of Jesus Christ and to become a Christian. Well, I believe that there is a very, very good reason for that. And I believe that that reason is something that shouldn't just be judged as, oh my gosh, I can't believe that person just transitioned to Christianity. What a joke. Or I can't believe they did that. How silly. And that's the energy that I've experienced when anyone's referenced people that I know that have made that transition. They've said it as if there's like some judgment around their decisions without really understanding or asking them about why they've done that. And so that to me is the first thing that I want to make very clear in this episode, that was a little bit of a shock for me, because even though I've been posting a lot on social media, I've been creating my content off social media and then integrating it through social media. I haven't really been on social media a lot. So I haven't really been in this world of debating each other or trying to tear other people down. And I remember that's exactly what it was like when I used to be on there. There was a lot of that energy. That's not the only flavor, but it exists there, and I'd forgotten about it. So when I saw these people kind of judging potentially me, but more referencing people that have made this transition in a really condescending tone, it just really caught me off guard, because I haven't been as active in that world recently and I haven't seen or experienced it as much. And when I did, it just felt yuck. So I just want to say, first and foremost, like, please, if you're on social media, even though it's inevitable and people are going to judge, people are going to cast their opinions, people that are posting, like myself, are also casting opinions on there. But just keeping in mind the best of your ability. I've gotten better at this over time through experience of feeling judgment and how that makes me feel, and then holding more compassion for others. I'm still learning and I'm still maturing emotionally and developing more compassion in the world. So no judgment if you are judging, but let's do our best to hold an open heart and not pretend that we know what's going on fully in someone else's world. Trusting people and respecting people as equals that are also going through a bunch of challenge in their life and have their own unique paths and have their own families and friends and ideas and dreams that are equally valid. And I really, really want to champion that as an idea. If you're listening to this podcast, please, let's approach this with this feeling of unity and mutual love and respect for other people's journeys. That's first and foremost. And that really is the energy through which had me do some deeper introspection on this topic and filter potential reasons through my own map of the spiritual path. So I just want to name that the trend that I've seen, and although it's not isolated to this, but the people that I happen to have witnessed transition from being advanced spiritual teachers to being students of Jesus Christ or followers of Jesus Christ, and then putting their other ideologies to the side or condemning them, have mainly been, just from what I've witnessed. I'm not saying it's the only situation, but it's part of the discussion point here, is that there've been female leaders That's what I've noticed. And the only one whose name I feel comfortable sharing is Doreen Virtue. And if you know who Doreen Virtue is a famous spiritual teacher who had the most popular oracle card decks in the world for a long, long time. I don't know exactly how long, but she's super famous, this lady, for creating oracle card decks, and did it for many, many, many years. If I had to guess, even though I don't know, I'd say 15 years plus. And all of a sudden, this lady who created all these oracle card decks to do with love, to do with angels, to do with fairies, to do with spirituality, found God, found Jesus. And not only did she just start to embrace her study of Christianity, but she actually discontinued every product that she'd created, all the oracle card decks that she created for the most likely decade plus, or potentially multiple decades before, or at least she's been studying spirituality for multiple decades before. And all of that got put into a category of dark-sided belief systems and ways to approach life. Really got condemned. And so they got discontinued, and they were very popular. And the reason I found out about this is because I wanted to buy one of the oracle card decks and they didn't exist anymore. And so you can only get them by buying secondhand ones and bidding for them on eBay. And it was just a real surprise, So Doreen Virtue now still does oracle card decks, but it's all religious oracle card decks, all Christian oracle card decks. So that to me was just a really big surprise. And then I've also seen several really large spiritual thought leaders that have big communities, that have pretty regimented, powerful ideas that they've written books on or designed big personal development training programs with, and just chucked it all in the bin. And now I found Jesus, and what I did before wasn't accurate. And I don't believe any of that anymore. I'm just a follower of Jesus Christ. And so I'm going to say first and foremost that I perceive that there's some serious wisdom in the choices that have been made. I'm not discounting those choices. It just really struck me as a surprise that someone would do that. And again, it's because I have a lot of respect for these female thought leaders, including Doreen Virtue, that have accrued so much wisdom and life experience and idea and understanding behind the spiritual journey and the human experience and the spiritual experience, that I didn't just take it as something stupid. If for someone to make such a big change in their life and be willing to collapse their entire identity and everything that came with it, their entire livelihood. Think about Doreen Virtue. It's not just, oh my gosh, that lady went crazy. That lady had a lot of courage to make that decision. Courage means core, comes from the Latin root word cor, C-O-R, which means heart. So I'm suggesting that someone would have to have a lot of love for this new path, for Jesus, for religion, to be willing to get rid of their entire livelihood, their entire identity, all the structures, all the systems, all the monetary streams of income, all the significance that got connected, all the ways that people looked up to them in that way. That's a really big, courageous thing to do. And it wouldn't have just been something that was done on a whim for a joke. Very well thought through. It would have to be. For someone to be willing to sacrifice so much, that's giving them so much and meeting so many of their needs, it has to have been something that's thoroughly thought through. I remember someone that did something similar, and I'm taking a little pivot here, but this is the first thing that I want to acknowledge, not to overlook someone making a decision like this, but Elliot Hulse. If you look up Elliot Hulse, he has a couple of YouTube channels with a combined following of a couple of million people. He spent years and years and years building his first YouTube channel, which I'm pretty sure was called Strength Camp. And he's this big Samoan looking man who's from America that was talking about training and health and a holistic way of being a strong, developed man. And at some point, he had a spiritual awakening and just not found Jesus, but just had a spiritual awakening and took all the kind of content that he was doing, pivoted that. And then all these young guys that followed and looked up to him for being this strong man, be like this. Here's how you get women. All the content became quite spiritual. And then all these young people are like, who the hell is this new guy? This new identity? I don't get behind this. Just like me with Doreen Virtue, I haven't gone out and bought a bunch of her new Oracle card decks that are about religion because I'm not in one particular religion myself. So now I am not buying her content. I'm not following Doreen Virtue, where I was more interested in her work beforehand. And that's what would happen if someone builds a whole following of people that look up to them for a particular reason and they're willing to strip that whole thing down and pivot to a new path. That has to be respected as a courageous decision for someone to pivot their journey and step on a new path of alignment. That's not just what happened to this crazy. It's a real person who gets up in the morning, has their own sticking points and hardships and thought streams and ideas and projects and ways to make money and things to focus on and relationships. For that person to discard their identity and adopt a whole new one, my gosh, that's wild. That's wild. So this is something that I first and foremost want to honor, that would take a lot of courage for someone to make a decision like this, which is why I'm not willing to simply overlook it, or why I wasn't willing to overlook it. Let's give people that make big life changes some respect for being willing to do that. Another person that did that I want to take the time to honor right now is me. I did this. I had my whole identity built up as this young coaching entrepreneur who made all this money through coaching coaches and built everything up around that. Young entrepreneur, succeeding, achieving all these things. And I was willing to surrender all of it to take a new path, which was, for me, terrifying, to be honest with you. I just have my internet's dropping out, so I'm just going to quickly check to see if my hotspot's working, and it is. We've just moved house, by the way. New backdrop, new bedroom, new place, temporary place before we do some overseas travel, and then we're going to find a new place. Anyway, let's pivot back into the episode. Respecting people for the big decisions they made. I made a big decision. I took away all of my source of significance as the young guy that was successful and really powerful entrepreneur, and just said, I'm willing to throw that in to see if I can love myself without that identity. And that was a big, big pivot for me. And it took a lot of courage to make that decision, a lot more courage than it even took to start that previous business in the first place. So just paying myself some homage and paying these people that have chosen to take a new path and surrender their identity in their previous path to do that. Okay. So let's hypothesize some reasons why someone would do this. The first thing that I want to mention is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. I see that as undeniable, irrefutable truth. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. If not, where do we come from? Sure, we started as single cell organisms. I'm pretty sure they're called zygotes on this planet. And those single cell organisms evolved into bacteria and then became slightly more complex. And then basic creatures were created, and then we evolved. And now we are multi-billion cell organisms that are super complex and super unique. And just going to get rid of this message. I keep having this message pop up on my screen saying the internet's not working, and it's distracting me because I don't want this to cut out. Anyway, I'm just going to keep forging forward. We evolved from single-celled organisms to these multi-complex human beings, multi-billion cell organisms. So that's where we came from scientifically. But why are we here? How do we have this consciousness? We are irrefutably, as Joe Dispenza would say, we come from the quantum field as a manifest form, from the unmanifest in the quantum to a manifest human being. So the unmanifest is spirituality. So we are spiritual beings, we are spiritual stored potential energy, and we've manifest into human form and having a human experience. And so just to look at a situation like someone converting into a religion and just casting judgment on it, it's such an immature and uninformed view. Because if we are spiritual beings having a human experience, as we evolve our consciousness over time, priorities are going to shift. And so if I was an athlete and all I knew was being an athlete, and then I decided to stop being an athlete to have a family, everyone else that saw life through the lens of life's about being an athlete is not going to understand why someone would pivot into becoming a parent. Whereas if someone wanted to ditch their athletic career because their soul is saying, hey, I'm over this athletic career, I want to become a family person now, that's something that's personal to them, but it's not necessarily worse than being an athlete. It's just a different flavor of being a human. Now I value and prioritize creating a family where I literally, through my own body, can spawn an actual human, which is art in the most complex, magical way. But we can easily, when we have a certain value set, cast judgment on that. Why would someone become a family member? Oh my gosh. Because that person's being ignorant and only seeing life through their own value set and their own lens. And so that person is casting judgment because they haven't put themselves in the shoes of this other person. Same thing. If someone's choosing to have a pivot in their lifestyle around spirituality or religion, it's not worse than someone else that's more focused on business or more focused on trying to conquer life through a spiritual lens, which is what I would say I'm more on that path of, attempting to embrace a fulfilling way of being through spirituality and evolving my consciousness outside a religious context. But I really perceive that there is potential, I don't know. This is all hypothetical, but I perceive that there could be serious spiritual maturity in making a decision to devote oneself to a particular religion. Now, if we go back to you know what? I'm just going to teach a framework called the 7 stages of consciousness. It's a Vedic tradition piece of theory. That is the area of study that I'm most familiar. Yeah, I would say I'm most familiar with this. This has had one of the biggest impacts on the way that I see life. The Vedic tradition, which is where Hinduism came from and yoga came from and Ayurveda came from. Meditation in a large degree came from this because a lot of Buddhist and Taoist philosophy also originated from the Vedic tradition, which is ancient Indian wisdom. And it's the oldest living set of documented spiritual wisdom or structured wisdom. It's 10,000 or so years old. Anywho, they've got a framework called the 7 stages of consciousness, the way that someone can evolve in consciousness. The first 3 stages of consciousness are more prior to spiritual awakening. You have sleeping, dreaming, and waking. So if you can sleep, you're asleep, you're awake, you're dreaming. These 3 states, it's a state of consciousness that is prior to a spiritual awakening. And someone can be in that zone without having their spiritual awakening and just going through life. And so if someone's in one of those three stages and they haven't yet had a spiritual awakening, they're viewing life through a different lens. And so I'm pre-framing this because when I share the next 4 stages of consciousness, it gives context to why someone's map of the world may be different, why someone might choose to do something like join a particular religion. So the 4th stage of consciousness is called transcendence consciousness. And transcendence consciousness is when someone gets a glimpse or a connection to the source of their creation. When someone has transcended, they've transcended their human experience and they're in a state of complete being, oneness, divinity, isness, the quantum realm, supernatural state, superconscious state. It's got a lot of different labels, but they touch it. The state of consciousness, it's a state. It's temporary. They will oscillate into that transcendent state. Cool, they're in a transcendent state of consciousness now. But then when someone comes out of, let's say they're using a meditation to get into transcendence, they come out of their transcendence meditation, and now they've oscillated back into their humanity, back into a normal state of, let's say, waking consciousness. Unless someone falls asleep in that meditation experience and then they go straight into sleeping consciousness or maybe into dreaming consciousness. But these are the first 3 stages. The 4th stage is transcendence. Okay, now when someone experiences transcendence for the first time, it's in a way, it's a spiritual awakening. It's a experience that has the potential to shift the way that someone understands and approaches their life. Very, very impactful and profound experience. And it's something that can only be experienced because where we came from can't be visited because it's invisible, non-manifest in essence. It just is. The quantum realm, there's this idea in science that an electron doesn't exist until it's observed, and then when it's observed, then it exists. That is similar in something that, how can you explain that? I can't go and visit the source of my potential physically because it's unmanifest. It's not physical. It's non-physical. It's non-manifest. And so for someone to get to see the world through a different lens, if someone hasn't yet had a transcendent experience that was powerful enough to awaken them to, oh my gosh, there's something more here in this life. If they haven't had that yet, their perspective of life is different to someone that has. And so, of course, that person that doesn't understand that is going to potentially judge that because they don't get it. I was the same. When I was a leader and I had a bunch of staff in the business that I ran, I was definitely not awakened. I was definitely ignorant. And I was in sleeping, waking, dreaming consciousnesses, those first 3 stages. If I had a staff member that meditated when my whole objective in life was being intensely attached to big layers of success, if someone was meditating, the only possible way that I could see value and merit in someone doing that is if it was going to support them hitting the KPIs in their job where they worked for me. And so I didn't see it as being that powerful because if someone wasn't hitting their KPIs, but they were still choosing to meditate, I'd be like, what a waste of time. It's not even helping you because I didn't understand the experience of the transcendence. So I would not be able to give a fair judgment on someone else's decision making because I just don't get it because I've never experienced it. So it's experiential. So on the same degree as that little reference or example, if someone's chosen to transition to becoming a full-time Christian and ditch their other spiritual beliefs, in my opinion, it's come from them evolving in their state of consciousness, which means that anyone else that hasn't evolved in that state of consciousness can't give an accurate perspective on that situation because they've never experienced the yearning to make that same transition because it hasn't yet been relevant for them to make that kind of decision in their life, because they're probably, me included, operating from a less evolved state of consciousness. Food for thought. So that's the fourth state of consciousness. The fifth state of consciousness is called cosmic consciousness. And that is a state, according to Vedic wisdom, that someone is established and connected so much to the transcendent state that they actually start to prioritize being more than existing in the world. They actually they've got so much reverence and love for the transcendence that their life starts to reflect more of a reclusive energy. They want to be deep in that space. They want to be transcending. They want to be connecting to oneness because it's so pure and so beautiful and so expansive that why would they want to spend time in duality, in the polarities of the manifest world, with pain and pleasure, good and bad, happy and sad, right and wrong, judgment? Why would they want to experience that when they could experience pure love and feel that wholeness that comes with that? And that's a state of consciousness called cosmic consciousness. And it usually looks like someone experiencing a bit of apathy in their life. What's the point? I know a lot of people, when they do Dr. John Demartini's work, kind of get confronted with the predicament of, okay, John, Dr. Demartini, you're saying that there is no better or worse. Well, what's the point of me doing anything in my life? If having no business or having a really big business is exactly the same, why would I even try to start a business? Makes no sense. My life's going to be equally good or bad regardless. So what's the point of anything? And that apathy is experienced by people that enter cosmic consciousness because they go, cool, when I'm equanimous, when I'm in equilibrium, I'm seeing everything as equal. I'm not judging things as good or bad, right or wrong, better or worse. I'm just seeing things as equal and seeing the beauty in everything, kind of. But there's some apathy there. What's the point? And that's a state of consciousness people enter called cosmic consciousness. The sixth state of consciousness, which is pretty rare, a very, very small amount of people enter this state of consciousness, is called God consciousness. Now, God consciousness is when someone takes that connection to oneness and creates a visceral association that everything that they revere about the divine is actually everything that is manifest in this world. So they love, in cosmic consciousness, they love the unmanifest, the non-duality, isness, timeless love, oneness, the divine. They've connected to that so much they love it. They want to be there all the time. But then they pivot in God consciousness to going, oh my gosh, everything that's ever been created, everything in the real world, all of life is that unmanifest world that I love so much, just in different flavors in life. Oh my gosh, everything that I see now and experience now and do now as a human being is just pure love. Everyone I meet, everyone I see, everything that happens to me in my life, everything about life is so beautiful. And they're looking through life with what I've heard Preston Smiles say, God goggles. God doesn't look at things as good, bad, right, wrong. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this person's not yet broken through in their business. And oh my gosh, is she still single? Pathetic. She's never going to meet someone. That's not what God's thinking. God sees everything as beauty because the whole purpose of life is to have manifested and created different flavors of itself in separate forms. And like Ram Dass says, we're all just God dressed in drag, different versions of God, where God is every player in the movie, every actor in the play, every player in the game. God is all of it, just dressed in different forms with different identities. And Johnny Pollard also says that the strongest force in the entire universe is ignorance, because ignorance is the energy that tricks someone to forget the truth of what they are, which is complete wholeness and oneness. We're all the same entity, just in separate forms. And so anyway, when someone goes into God consciousness, they recognize that and experience that as a state. I understand that intellectually, and I've experienced transcendence, but I don't see that when I look through life. Someone says something to me and I can get triggered by it, and why is that happening? And damn you, and I'm separate. I'm feeling separate, and there's division, and there's me living in my head, living in my fear consciousness to say, oh my gosh, I'm unsafe. Damn you. I'm going to judge you. I'm going to judge that as good because it's going to help my safety. I'm going to judge that as bad because it's detracting from my safety. And that's how I perceive life a lot of the time. So I'm definitely not in God consciousness, but it is a state. And what happens is when someone's in God consciousness, their idea, this is going to take some attuned listening, but their idea of God, in Vedic wisdom, God has got lots of different labels and lots of different flavors. But there's a term called Ishwara. Ishwara means supreme being. And the theory in the Vedic tradition is that when someone connects to God consciousness, their idea of God personified is different in different people. So some people, based on their unique soul flavor and personality and ego and whatnot, might revere and go, oh my gosh, the sun is the God. And I love the sun so much because the sun, as a personified version of isness or oneness, as a personification of the creative potential of the universe, the source of all creation, I'm going to give that a label so I can connect to it more. That's the sun. The sun is my idea of God, my Ishwara. And now I love and revere the sun. Thank you, sun. You created everything that I love so much. You are my absolute love and divine. And I want to devote myself to you and be this devoted approach to everything through that lens. That's an evolved state of consciousness, God consciousness. And I don't understand that. I've got a little bit of inclination towards it, but I'm definitely not in that state. So just putting out a hypothesis that someone that converts to Christianity might have had their Ishwara from the Vedic languaging presented to them as Jesus. Jesus is a creator. Jesus is everything. That is what I perceive the flavor of the divine to be. A being of so much love and understanding and compassion that could forgive the people that executed him in the process of being in that pain. That is my personified idea of oneness. That is what I like to see as God. And so this is something that I don't understand the experience of, but I understand intellectually. So potentially, just throwing it out there as a potential, someone that converts to Christianity may have potentially seen and evolved in their consciousness so much that they want to devote themselves. They may, and this goes beyond the intellectual conversation that I'm having here on this podcast, that I don't understand. It goes beyond comprehension. I'm not the even though I'm also God and everything that's manifest is God. And my if you're watching the YouTube version of this podcast, you can see me holding up the lid of my drink bottle. This is also God, technically. Everything is. Everything that's been created is oneness in separate form. And that, even though that's true, I'm not at that state of consciousness. I'm not connected to that, so I don't know that experience, but that could be what's happening when certain people who have converted to Christianity have converted to it. They have potentially connected to their Ishvara and seen God through that lens, seeing God through that light, as Jesus being their God and Jesus being the flavor of why they love life so much. Thank you so much for giving me everything. And in that, because there's so much reverence for it, there is also I don't want to participate in any other of my own doings, my own beliefs, my own spiritual ideas. That's irrelevant because you, Jesus, are the creator. You are the one that's given me life. You are the one that's created all of this. And so my devotion is now to you. And my reward is the experience of love that I feel and acknowledge when I look at everything in life that you created. And that could very well be the approach that some people are experiencing. Probably not with everyone, especially if there's a lot of hate in the energy. If someone's like, I hate all this other spiritual stuff and it's bad and wrong because someone's in God consciousness, doesn't look at life through that lens. But I'm not going to pretend that there's not a good chance that someone is connected to God consciousness. And that's why they've found Christianity. Quick little drink. Food for thought. Food for thought. So just going to drop on that point. The seventh stage of consciousness is unity consciousness, and that's when someone is living in a human body, but so closely connected to oneness that their personality is drifting out and they're getting close to going back to the great beyond. If you've seen the Disney movie Soul, and the way that they depict that idea of being in that light kind of escalator that's going up through the cosmos into that pure white light. That's someone in unity consciousness. Far from the concerns that I am connecting to in my life. I'm not at that point. I'm not in God consciousness, but I understand them. And I know people that are in these states of consciousness. Anywho, that's that. That's one thing. Another thing to consider here is that if someone, and this is, I'm just going to pre-frame that, I'm just going to give my direct, unfiltered, political correctness to the side ideas around some things to do with men, women, masculinity, and femininity. And you're entitled to have your own beliefs around it, and I'm entitled to have mine. And I'm going to share mine. You can do what you want with them. So I also perceive that there are some seriously powerful female leaders around the world that are in the spirituality space that, in my observation, tend to have actually more of a masculine energy. I don't really want to name names because I know a lot of these people, and that it's not bad per se, but I think that their experience of life might be unsustainable in their non-natural energy. And I believe that men in their masculine energy feel safest and most connected and aligned in most cases, not all cases, and that women in their feminine energy will feel most aligned, fulfilled, connected in their feminine energy in most cases. And so I perceive that there are a lot of powerful female leaders that have lived a very masculine life due to their upbringing, due to their karma, due to whatever. Nothing to do with them being bad people in any way. It's not wrong. But I do perceive that from a energy perspective, that there'll be some unsustainability towards that. That if someone is a woman in their feminine energy, hustling, working hard, leading from a masculine energy of control and order and discipline and focus and structure and systems, and if they're perceiving life and experiencing life and approaching life from that masculine lens, that to some degree, that's an unsustainable approach. And I do perceive that just from what I've witnessed, and because I've known some of these people that have made transitions from being spiritual teachers to students and followers of Jesus Christ, that there was some exhaustion there, getting to the point where they're either newish mums or wanting to meet someone and form a family. There's something in their consciousness that's saying, hey, you don't have to work so hard, you don't have to hold it all together. You figured out what life is, what the approach is, how to live life. You come up with all these ideas. You've written these books. You've designed these programs. You've led these communities. And you know what? There's going to come a point where you're actually going to get more growth in your life and more fulfillment in your life by not doing more of that, but by doing less of that. And there's this beautiful idea that I've heard Jason Silver talk about. He quoted somebody else. I don't know who the original person was, but flow as an idea when I think of flow, I think of feminine. But this quote is that flow happens at the junction point between discipline and surrender. And what I hear in that is that flow happens at the junction point, alignment happens at the junction point, fulfillment happens at the junction point, presence happens at the junction point between masculine and feminine. When the perfect golden mean or subjective balance between masculine and feminine, wherever someone ideally in their most alignment finds their perfect balance between discipline and surrender. I perceive that female leaders who are quite in their masculine may, and this is just hypothesis, I don't know. This is my hypothesis. I enjoy talking about it, but I'm not in their shoes. So this is another theory as something that could potentially see, something I've witnessed, and I'm just going to throw out as a theory that someone may potentially have spent a lot of time in their masculine energy and just be tired. And it's taken, they've used a lot of courage, a lot of willpower, a lot of devotion, a lot of hard work, and a lot of just approaching life with a lot of empowerment to create what they've created, but they've hit a ceiling in their masculine and gone, you know what? Their consciousness has said, hey, evolution's now going to come from surrendering. You've been disciplined so much, you've been masculine so much, you deserve to receive. And for someone, if this is true, in specific cases of feminine spiritual thought leaders converting to Christianity, if it is true that they've done that because they've been in the masculine for so long and they're surrendering that, my gosh, to restate that point that I mentioned earlier, it would take so much courage for someone to make that decision. And it could easily be perceived by peers of theirs or followers of theirs of, oh my gosh, you've just given in. That comment that I read, I'll get it up again on my Facebook, that comment that I read earlier where people were talking about me potentially have converted to God, and the judgment that was on that. I'm going to go back to the comment. So the comment was, I'm seeing that trend also, that after they feel like they have tried everything and still feel broken, they just give up. And so turn to God as a way to justify what's happening to them and save them. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is this particular person that said, I'm seeing the trend is that they feel like they've tried everything and still feel broken. They just give up and turn to God. And I've got a kind of somewhat similar perspective, but just not looking at it through the given up. It's not that they've given up, like they've quit and they've failed because they've been approaching it wrong, and now they're quitting because they're weak. It kind of feels like that's the presupposition in there. They've tried, nothing's working, they still feel like they're broken, and then they go to God as an absolute tail between their legs. You couldn't do it, so you quit. That's not how I see it at all. It's that they've actually, with the particular people that I know of that have converted to Christianity, they've crushed it in life and done a lot and achieved a lot. And then they've gotten to a point where they realize that there's a ceiling with that, and that they've learned through that, and that took so much courage to create and build and actually thrive and succeed. It's not that they failed at what they were doing. It's that they succeeded with it. And then they found that there is potentially an even more powerful approach for them, which means surrendering ultimately their entire identity. And instead of viewing life through the lens of, I'm doing everything, they're taking a courageous leap to say, you know what? It's not me calling all the shots. It's not me that's doing everything. It's God, it's Jesus. And I'm willing to accept that I am not the leader of the whole universe, but instead I am a humble participant doing my best. Please, I'm surrendering now. I'm having the courage to surrender. Please show me the way. Please guide me. Please support me. And that, in my opinion, is one powerful decision if, because this is all speculatory, if that's the motivating factor that someone has led from in that approach if they've made that transition. That's another perspective through which to view it. Another perspective is that someone was just sick of trying and that they do feel broken and they're like, God save me. And I mean, if someone does choose that, which is what the somewhat judgmental undertoned comment on my cover photo kind of insinuated, if someone does that, then good on them. I mean, do you, speaking to the person that wrote that comment, think that like you have all the answers? That your life is better if you kind of break through? See, my perspective is we've got 8 billion people in the world. My perspective is that we're all incarnated here to have a different flavored experience of life. Some people are going to be a gardener. Some people are going to be firemen. Some people, and I'm just using career as a way to show some different flavors. Life is about so many more flavors than just career. Someone's here to go for parliament. Someone's here, and their soul flavor is to be an athlete. Someone else's soul flavor is to be an engineer. Someone else's soul flavor is to do social justice work. Someone else is to be a school teacher, and they're all beautiful flavors of life. We're all living and we're all going to die. And so we have this window of life and window of opportunity to experience while we're here, whatever feels aligned to us. So whether someone wants to be a student, a follower of Jesus Christ, whether they want to convert to Islam, whether they want to be a spiritual student, or they want to say stuff spirituality, in my opinion, it's all just flavors of existence. It's all just God in drag going, wonder what it feels like to be this and do this, this, and this. Wonder what it feels like to say, screw my health, I'm just going to binge eat a bunch of food. Or my flavor is screw health, binge eat a bunch of food. Oh my gosh, I feel crap. Now I'm going to start prioritizing my health, and now I help people with my health. None of them are better. But in my opinion, the experience that someone will get to have inside of their body, mind, and soul, the way that they feel in their reality is going to be more or less fulfilling based on one's connection to their own alignment. And if you want to understand more of this, I've done some other podcast episodes. We'll put them in the show notes where I address the ultimate truth behind reality. And I've done a podcast episode called "The Meaning of," it was either "The Purpose of Life" or "The Meaning of Life." And I'll share my full perspective on there if you want to go check that out. But who are we to judge? First and foremost, if we're judging, we are going to experience the venom of that judgment, and we're going to experience the feeling of separation and the non-fulfillment that comes from that, the suffering that comes from that, where we're like, oh my gosh, that person converted to Christianity. Can't believe they gave up and they quit. We're feeling separate in that situation. If the person that became a Christian is feeling, oh my gosh, I'm so connected to God. I'm now devoted. Thank you so much, Jesus. Thank you for everything. Thanks for creating all of this. And they're seeing everything through the eyes of love. They're probably seeing the person that's judging them through the eyes of love as well. And that person that's seeing the judger through the eyes of love is experiencing love and fulfillment. However, I just feel it's not cool on a human level to just be judging other people on their path. And we all do it. I do it. I'm not enlightened, so I still have things that I think are better and worse in life. And I have the preference not to judge. I do it as little as possible, but I still do. And let's do our best not to. Let's give people their sovereignty and honor and respect for being a unique flavor of God, their own whole person, whole being, and respect and honor their path. It's just, in my opinion, it's a nice approach to have in order to be able to connect with people and build community and feel like we belong here and we're respecting and loving other people. So in a nutshell, I perceive that there's a chance that I believe that anyone that is a thought leader, whether they're male or female, but I've referenced more because my own experience has been knowing of some powerful female thought leaders in the spirituality space that have converted to Christianity and left behind their other spiritual beliefs at the door. I perceive that they have done that as an evolutionary step in their life, that they're actually moving forward, that they're growing, and it's taken them courage, it's taken them heart to make that decision. And that if you don't do the same thing, you can still be evolving. I can still be evolving and moving forward without converting to Christianity in an equal level in my own approach in my own life, and so can you. And I think it's worth honoring the courage that it would take someone to make a leap of faith like that, to surrender and shed their identity, to be able to pivot paths so strongly in a spiritual front to do something like that. Obviously, there are other perspectives as well, heaps of other perspectives on the topic. I just think that they're probably more commonly spoken about, so it's less valuable for me to talk about them and more valuable for me to talk about the different states of consciousness and just what I noticed with someone being able to move from discipline to surrender, and for a female leader to get a lot of value from that, for it to take a lot of courage to do that. And there are obviously powerful aspects around community, powerful benefits in community for someone to make that transition. And you know what? I value community massively now. I'm not the most competent in community, meaning I don't feel fully safe in community, and I don't necessarily contribute to community and foster community in the most powerful way because I'm still learning to do that because I'm a bit of a noob at it. However, I value it. I perceive that it is a hugely powerful ingredient to fulfillment in life. And I was a part of this huge organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, global organization. There's about 15,000 entrepreneurs that are all quite successful, doing over $1.5 million is the baseline amount of income you have to do to join. And so there's a lot of successful people in there. And it's a global organization. So when I was in the Melbourne chapter of that, and I would catch up with 7 other people each month who were very successful entrepreneurs, and we'd talk about things that we may not have the opportunity to talk about with the employees of our companies, with our friends and family may not understand the dilemma of, hey, someone's trying to sue me, or I'm buying a Lamborghini today, and not feel comfortable to talk to other people because other people might judge them. And so we'd catch up and talk about the most vulnerable stuff, the most difficult stuff, and beautiful, beautiful people would catch up with monthly, and we'd do this update. We'd update on personal, what's happening in our personal life. We'd update in our relationship or family life as the second category. Community was the third category, and business was the fourth category. So we'd share what's the biggest thing that's happened in each of those 4 areas. And I was in this group for a couple of years. And after a few months of us doing our what was called the update each month, no one really understood what community was. Like, what do we put in here? Like, I didn't go to church. I'm not in any religion. I didn't go to any community groups. I just have my business, my family, and my personal stuff. Personal would also be friendships, but it's not a community. No one even none of us understood what that meant. So we just crossed that whole piece of the update out. And most other people in Melbourne and Victoria were similar. But in America, they use that a lot. And my perception is because in America, there's a lot more religion. And so in Australia, I've noticed there's a lot of judgment around people converting to Christianity. I would say there's a huge percentage of people that are entrepreneurs, especially in like Austin and Texas and some other places around America. It's more common to be in a religion than it's not. And so they know what it's like to have community. I personally don't really know what that feels like. And it feels different and scary, and I don't feel safe, and I want to go and lone wolf it again. So I feel that also there is a lot of merit in the understanding that someone may join a religion And I'm not saying that people do it just for community, but I feel like that's a factor, that's a huge benefit of being in religion that's more commonly spoken about. Anyway, kind of riffing. The riff is done now. I've kind of hit the points. Would just really like to remind and mention again that let's just love people for their path. Let's just love and honor their path. And if we're really curious, have a conversation with someone about it and understand them. Don't just go using it as a topic of gossip, but a topic of curiosity, sure. Gossip, that's not cool. It's not cool. So massive love and respect for anyone that's made any big life pivots, even if it's not joining a religion. But if you've done something that feels really aligned for you, that took a lot of courage, celebrating that big time. Go you rock. And if you enjoyed this episode, please go give it a rating. That would mean a lot to me. If you want to do the next steps in terms of evolving your approach to life and get some support from myself on integrating the spiritual, emotional, and physical layers of life, and how does it all fit together? How can you pursue business and also feel really connected to yourself and keep your spiritual practices up? How can you be in your relationship, but then also prioritizing time for business? How can you put yourself out there and make more money, but then stay connected to your emotions? There's so many different elements to this advanced modern day student of life. I found it so difficult to integrate them, and that's been my whole path. So there's a lot of service that I give, and I've got this unique approach to life that simplifies, that I live by, that makes my life so much more fulfilling. And that's what I teach you, the art of fulfillment, by facilitating a series of experiences to teach a key set of principles of understanding how it all integrates together, and a key set of practices. Small set of principles, small set of practices, taught very thoroughly and deeply through your own experience in the workshop. It's a powerful workshop, if I don't say so myself, and I love holding space for people to completely transform their lives and their approach to life through that. So go check it out at ryanmagic.com. That website may or may not be updated from Art of Courage to Art of Fulfillment, but it's in essence very, very similar. I just changed the name. So if you got any questions, email me, ryan@ryanmagic.com. If you just want to reach out and say hi or shoot me a message, if anything in this episode or other ones struck your curiosity and you have a question, or you want to make a comment, or you want to send me some love, all are welcome and much appreciated. Anyway, lots of love, guys, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Peace.